In Super Bowl 55, Tom Brady will surpass Matt Stover as the oldest player to ever play in the big game. Is there no justice in this world? But football is a team game, and age is just a number. Well, for this list, we find examples of decrepit olds achieving their last moments of glory before being marched into their retirement homes, and young kids barely out of college still waiting for their first pubes and wearing retainers at night. The oldest and youngest teams to win a Super Bowl is coming up right after this. It's easy to become one of the youngest teams to win the Super Bowl when your starting quarterback is just 24, the youngest quarterback to ever lead his team to the Lombardi. Patrick Mahomes was a few months younger than Ben Roethlisberger when he won for the first time in 2005. Both quarterbacks actually had pretty subpar games by their standards, Mahomes throwing a pair of picks to the Niners, but their teams were able to lift them up when necessary. The Chiefs would have edged out the next team on this list if they hadn't signed Terrell Suggs in the middle of the season, but throwing a 37-year-old in the mix was probably good for leadership, if not bad for their demographics and accessibility requirements. Roster. Aikman, Smith, and Irvin, dubbed the triplets, were all 26 or under. And sure, that led to some maturity issues like the occasional coke binge or pair of scissors in the neck of a teammate over experience. Or maybe it was a net positive that they hadn't been addled by Super Bowl PTSD like the Bills. The team led by a 62-year-old head coach also had the second youngest roster to ever hoist the Lombardi, thanks to their ability to harass a 37-year-old man who had just been named MVP. Good thing I'm not on Twitch. The Hawks had developed some serious homegrown talent, especially the Legion of Boom. Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor were both 25, and Earl Thomas just 24, all drafted by Seattle within 2 years of each other. Only 3 starters were drafted by a team other than the Seahawks, the most notable one, of course, being ex-Bill, Marshawn Lynch. More than anything, this team was a testament to finding cheap talent. Their most expensive player was, shockingly, tight end Zach Miller at $11 million, followed by Sidney Rice and Lynch. In fact, the team was still paying Matt Flynn $4 million that year to play elsewhere, almost 6 times what they paid Chef Russ. And the youngest roster ever to win the big game was... Wait, what? Who would have guessed that a team led by Tom Brady would have ended up being the youngest team to ever win the big game? And they beat the team that just a year earlier had become the youngest when they won it. Brady was 37, but the guy who made the biggest play in that game was a 24-year-old undrafted rookie cornerback. That was really 6 years ago. If you really look into their roster, you'll find that they only started one rookie that season, center Brian Stork, and their starting secondary included 2 27-year-old safeties, a 30-year-old Brandon Browner, and a 29-year-old Darrell Revis. Likewise, the defense was anchored by 33-year-old Vince Wilfork, and their sack leader was 30-year-old Rob Ninkovich. So a lot of their biggest contributors were older dudes, well over the 25-and-a-half-year-old average of the team, but the team's depth chart was rounded out by kids young enough to be Tom Brady's sons. I'm sure he wanted to kiss them too. Before we get to the old dudes, here's a quick word from our sponsor. It's time to hit y'all with some real talk. 2 months ago, I went to the doctor and they ran my cholesterol and blood pressure, and surprisingly, both were actually high. How could this be? I work out 6 times a week. I'm skinny. How was I so unhealthy? Bottom line is, my diet was horrible. And now with HelloFresh and their healthy options, I can eat healthy, delicious, carb-smart food from the safety and convenience of my own home. I was a little skeptical of their vegetarian options, but look at me rock this sun-dried tomato spaghetti. And it was absolutely delicious. With HelloFresh, you can save time, and there's nothing like the comfort of knowing you don't have to go to that germ-infested grocery store to buy unhealthy processed food. So after this video, head on over to HelloFresh.com from the link below. Check out their flexible meal plans and options. Use my code 10FIVEPOINTS and get 10 free meals, including free shipping. You heard that correct. Go to HelloFresh.com, use my code 10FIVEPOINTS, and get 10 free meals and free shipping. Take charge of your health. HelloFresh.com. The dudes that were old as hell now were also old as hell back then. At least, relatively speaking, they were compared to the other Super Bowl winners. They were only 27 and a half on average, but looking at some of their faces, you'd think they were at least 50. You're gonna tell me that Ray Nitschke was in his early 30s here? Maybe the TB12 method is actually onto something. Max McGee was only 35, but looked like your 65-year-old alcoholic uncle, and was still somehow able to play through hangovers like he was 19. Who won 5 with the pack? We can't say he ever hosted the Lombardi, but that's only because they didn't name it the Lombardi Trophy until after he passed in 1970. Are we allowed to call them the Redskins when referring to the pre-2020 Washington teams, or is that dead naming? Oh well, Pro Football Reference calls them that, and good enough for the stat nerds is good enough for me. The 91 Skins are the third oldest Super Bowl team ever, and they're also sneakily one of the best teams ever with a point differential of plus 261 in the regular season and plus 61 in the playoffs. One of Washington's greatest strengths that year, their receiving corps, was also one of their oldest position groups. Their top 3 wideouts, Gary Clark, Ricky Sanders, and Art Monk, who were 29, 31, and 80 respectively. Okay, he was 34. And they combined for over 3,000 yards of offense and 23 touchdowns in the regular season. Age may have also played into a big reason for the team's success. The Redskins had won the Super Bowl just 4 years earlier in 1987. Clark, Monk, and Sanders were all part of a team that had won with Doug Williams at quarterback. So were other leaders like the ageless Darryl Green. 3 of the Hogs, Joe Jacoby, Russ Grimm, and Jeff Bostic, were even with the team when they won their first title in 1982. Talk about dad strength and dad jokes. For the last entry on this list, it's a surprise, as in surprisingly the same team, twice. The Broncos followed up back-to-back Super Bowl titles with a 6-10 season in 1999. With the 2 oldest rosters to win a Super Bowl, there was bound to be an exodus of talent in the aftermath of double Lombardis, as well as a few players hitting a cliff. Their leader, John Elway, retired at age 38. Hall of Fame safety Steve Atwater left for the Jets at age 32. Who the hell remembers that? Ah yes, Jets legend Steve Atwater. Oh yeah, and their best player wrecked his knee 4 games into the 99 season. But the fact that the Broncos won 2 championships with an average age well over 28 shows that drafting and developing isn't the only recipe for success. In 1998, 12 of Denver's 22 starters on offense and defense were acquired by trade or free agency, including Elway, who was technically drafted by Baltimore. Funnily enough, which is totally a word, the Broncos were led by Mike Shanahan, the 5th youngest head coach, in 1997. So what have we learned? It's clear that the closer we get to the present day, championship teams are getting younger. And there are a few reasons for that. More players are retiring early, more kids are coming out of college sooner to get paid, and the rookie wage scale makes it favorable to get talent on the cheap. We may never see a team like the 97-98 Broncos again. But there's no one right way to do it, and it is cool to see some old geezers win the big one, unless their names are Antonio Brown, Tom Brady, or Le'Veon Bell. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video. Good for you.